chances are you've gotten one of these texts at this point, right? The ones that say you owe money maybe for an unpaid toll, or you missed jury duty, or maybe that your license is about to be suspended unless you pay it right now. These scam texts are exploding, and they're getting more convincing by the day. They're impersonating real government agencies and courts, including the Philadelphia Municipal Court, as well as agencies like PennDOT. And cybersecurity experts say that this is part of a larger wave of AI-powered impersonation scams that are designed to scare you into paying before you can even stop to think about it. And that is why our guest this week is Ron Kerbs. He's the CEO of Philadelphia-based cybersecurity firm Kidas, and he is going to help us break down why the fear and urgency that these texts elicit work so well, the warning signs that maybe most of us miss, and why these scams are accelerating right now. And maybe more importantly, too, how new AI tools might be able to actually help stop anyone from losing money in the first place. I'm your host, Josh Sidorowicz. This is the In Your Corner podcast from CBS News Philadelphia. Ron, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, Josh.
So, we know the Pennsylvania Attorney General's office says that it has seen an explosion in reports from people who say that they've gotten one of these text messages. Like I said, I think we all have in the past year or so. But even for as many people who say, well, who's falling for it? Come on. The reported losses are increasing here as well. They've exceeded $75 million just in reported losses alone in Pennsylvania over the past year or so. And just within the past month here, we reported on a warning from Philadelphia courts about a fake text message that appeared to be coming from the city's traffic division. So why now? Why are we seeing this acceleration here in these past few years with this kind of approach?
Yeah, it's definitely getting crazy. It's estimated that 96% of the Americans receive at least one scam message every week.
96%.
96%, whether they're getting it via email, text messages, calls. We don't necessarily respond to all of them, and sometimes we have filters like we have on Gmail or on other platforms to filter those messages, but we're still getting them. And the problem is that new AI tools are being used in order to target people in their most vulnerable moments. So the moment that they out of the country and then they suddenly receive jury duty without knowing that they're not at home, so they cannot receive the mail, or something happened in the family. Someone in the family was defrauded, so someone is calling them and say, "Hey, I'm calling you because I'm from Chase or I'm from Bank of America and I want to help you resolve it." They know exactly what is happening. They know exactly where they at in any given moment in terms of mentally they were just scammed, or physically they're out of the country, and they do it based on information that they gather online. So information that people post on social media, information that they share in groups, in Telegram groups, Discord groups, and so on, in order to get the most specific information to make it look as most credible as possible.
So you're telling me, because we're all just like oversharers at this point, our information is out there, yes, and that's where scammers are pulling this from. But where does AI come in?
Yeah, so AI is basically one of the tools that allow them to create impersonations and to find the most relevant information. So instead of one person going over all social media, Instagram or TikTok, and finding those people, they use AI agents, they use automated tools to find the relevant targets, to create the relevant message, personalized message based on their location, based on the way they talk, and then they use AI tools in order to impersonate to the people that are reaching out to them. So if it's the local sheriff, they're gonna use a sample of their voice that you can find, on YouTube or from the local TV channel, in order to create voice cloning of the sheriff and call them. So if you're from a local city or a small town, you know the sheriff, you know how they sound. You get a jury duty, you get a phone call from the sheriff, and suddenly all clicks, and you're like, yeah, I know this person. I've heard them before. The number looks right because it's very easy to, spoof the numbers that you see on your phone. Yeah. So everything clicks. So you just fall for it.
So they're using AI, one, to make these messages as personal as possible for the recipient based on the information that we're kind of putting out. It makes it easier for them to kind of build a profile on us. Is that essentially it? and then they're using AI in the actual deployment of the scam itself. It sounds like you're talking about some of the voice cloning or other things, or just that they can, easily mock up a website that looks like something similar, right?
Exactly. And it's funny, you said, who's going to fall for those things? I run a scam protection company and I almost fell for one of those things just 2 weeks ago. And I can share with you the story. So
Okay, well, here's the Ron. If you're almost falling for it, I mean, is there any hope for the rest of us here?
I think there is hope. You just need to make sure you know the red flags. But
What happened?
I'll tell you what happened. So my flight was canceled, and I was flying with a European company, Lufthansa. It was a strike, a pilot strike. So a lot of a lot of flights were canceled. So I was trying to call them, didn't get any answer because everyone was calling. So I asked Gemini, the Google AI platform, hey, I'm not getting any answer. Are there any other numbers that I can call? He said, yeah, sure. Instead of calling the US number that probably a lot of people call right now, how about you call the UK number? It's now 8 p.m. Eastern in the US. It's the middle of the night. It still works 24/7 in the UK, so probably not a lot of people will call. So that's actually a great idea. So I called the UK number, but in fact, it wasn't the UK number. So scammers set up a fake website pretending to be Lufthansa. Gemini, that was crawling, website, basically found the number, recommended the number to me, and I was calling them. Once I called them, I started talking with them. I realized that those are scammers, so I didn't provide the information, but I was just cautious. Someone else just got a number, verified number by Gemini, called them. They answered, they say Lufthansa. And would have given them the number. Once you've given them all of your details, they can refund themselves for the money, and you basically lost the flight.
Well, yet another example, too, why these chatbots, you got to be careful what they're actually giving back to you. You got to verify it once they've given you a response. Well, I'm glad, first of all, that you caught on at least quickly before anything happened. So that's one avenue, right, of impersonation where so you had to reach out to them. In a lot of cases, in kind of what I was talking about here today, is where they're reaching out to us unsolicited, and yes, there are more sophisticated ways where they've even got voices or they'll do other things. But in a lot of cases, I'm just getting these ridiculous text messages about like, hey, you owe an Easy Pass toll in the state of Pennsylvania or something. And it seems so random. It's for me it seems very obvious, but they're clearly having success with it because they continue to do it.
Yeah.
So I always tell people like who would fall for this. Well, clearly people are because the scammers continue to do it. So it's lucrative. It must be working.
Yeah, it's working, and just last year, American lost $12.5 billion to scams. So it's not just a problem in Pennsylvania, it's a problem throughout the nation. And people fall for it because they're in a hurry. So you receive it, you know that, it's probably not meant for you. But if you were driving, you were taking Easy Pass recently, and you were expecting something like that, there is a good chance that you would fall for it. And honestly, companies are not doing a really good job in communicating in a way that doesn't sound like scammers. So I'll give you an example. So Easy Pass, for example, if you're running between states, so let's say your Easy Pass is Pennsylvania, you're going to New Jersey, or maybe you're going to New York.
Which a lot of people do around here.
Yeah, a lot of people do. Connecticut, all of the tri-state area. Basically, if you move between accounts and your plate number is not registered, you're gonna get a mail from them asking you to pay, even though you have the membership.
Right.
Most people think those are scams. Those are not.
That's
scams.
actually real.
That's actually real. So the reason that people fall for those scams is because they had the experience before of those agencies reaching out to them, asking them for payment. So it's not out of the blue. Some of those people actually received those payment notifications before, and they're like, okay, I had it before, so it must be real again. So that's the reason that people fall for it.
I also I did some reporting on this last year too, and one of the things that was described to me in terms of why this is so prevalent and such a preferred avenue for scammers is you mentioned AI, but also that it's such an easy way for scammers, and it's cheap, and they also take advantage of some of the inconsistencies of, like, let's use the toll agencies for example. There's no universal. There's Easy Pass, there's SunPass, Easy Pass. Even between
Yeah,
Pennsylvania and New Jersey and Delaware, there are differences in the domains and how they're named, and so they kind of latch on to the sort of vagueness and those small differences. And it's another way that, because people don't necessarily know what is the real thing that they're looking for, right?
exactly, exactly. And because of those inconsistencies between how companies communicate with you, scammers can use it in their advantage in order to scam you. That's the problem. That's why, one of the first thing that we need to do, as a country, is to make sure that we set standards on how companies communicate with you. Because
Mm.
companies are still asking you for credit card information or even social security number when they call you from the bank. And they're going to ask you for four last digits of your social security number, and that's legitimate conversations. Those are things that shouldn't be happening, and we should have a protocol on how you verify someone's identity when you are initiating the call. Because otherwise, if we don't do it, we just make it easier for scammers to pretend to be those banks, those agencies.
How would you do that? Have some kind of standardized protocol across the board for different industries? Is that even possible?
So, in other countries, they set standards. In the UK, for example, they define that it's the bank responsibility if someone was scammed and money was stolen from their account, which basically moved the incentives to the bank. So now the bank is now worrying, okay, if I have to reimburse my customer if someone was scamming them, I got to make sure that they're not being scammed.
Better be
How,
darn sure, yeah.
yeah. So how do I do that? I educate them. I change my protocols to make sure that it looks legitimate.
Hmm.
I do whatever I can in order to make sure that those calls are sounding legitimate. Other countries in Europe created specific domains for banks. So all of the banks are coming from specific domains. So in order to send email from a specific domain, you have to be a registered bank. So you only have a few hundred banks that are registered to a specific domain. So no one can pretend to be a bank, because you know that if it's coming, or your systems know that if it's coming from a domain that is not associated with a bank, that's not the bank.
Hmm.
So those are some ways that other countries have been dealing with it.
Whether you're talking about municipal agency or a bank even, what is it about impersonating these types of agencies in particular that is so effective for scammers?
It's mainly the urgency. So when you receive those notifications, it's mainly something that, an authority that can do something to you. They can charge you
Mm.
money. They can do something that, will hurt you in some way. That creates urgency. People are scared. And once you're scared, you just want to find a relief. And to find a relief is like, okay, I just want to pay it. I just want to be over with that. I didn't plan to have anything like that. I'm not even 100% sure that that's actually the agency. In some
Mm.
cases, people tell us that. Like, I was like 95% it's the agency, but I don't care. I just want it to go away.
So that's where the psychological manipulation comes into this here. So it's the wanting to act fast or the need to act fast, but then because the demand is coming from an authority.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. That's the case. And, I've heard about uh, Warren students, UPenn students,
Mhm.
international students. They got calls, and they said, "Hey, it's the U.S. government. We have a problem with your visa. Unless you fix it, you have to leave the country in 1 week." And those people were paying because they were like, "Okay, that's $100 or $120. I'm paying a lot of money to attend UPenn. I moved all the way from China or from India. I'm going to do that.
Mhm.
I don't want to leave the country."
Yeah. And which is why it's so important. And I try to reiterate every time we have one of these stories, when you're talking about these different agencies and organizations, they will all say the same thing, that they will never communicate in the ways that these scammers are and make these kinds of demands, right? Like a local government is never going to demand payment through a text or just over an unsolicited phone call
or gift cards.
or a gift card, yeah.
Yeah.
Or, a bank is never going to say, they're never going to call you out of the blue and say you've got to do this immediately over the phone, right? That there are steps to follow. And so I think that that's so important too when you're talking about awareness, is like people just need to generally understand the protocol that is already in place for a lot of these agencies and how they operate, that this is not normal.
Yeah, it's not normal, but sometimes, they're relying on the fact that they're targeting older people, seniors, younger people, and it's quite different on how they target those people. So older people trust more the system, so they have been using it to call them from known entities,
Sure.
entities that they're trusting. And with the younger generation, it's actually different. So those people don't really trust the government as the older people, but they do trust the internet. So if they follow an influencer, a gamer, a YouTuber, they trust them. So they pretend to be those people, the influencers, the YouTubers, and they start communicating with them as if they are the influencer. And those people are willing to do a lot to meet their fans of those people. So once they initiate the conversation and pretend to be those influencers, those gamers, it's easier to trick kids. So based on the type of, based on your age, based on your demographic, they send you the type of scams that are going to be relevant for you.
So for younger people, they're using influencers in impersonating those people.
Yeah. Influencers, YouTubers, gamers, famous gamers.
And for older people, they're impersonating the institutions.
Exactly.
Interesting. Okay. And again, they know how old we are and our demographics because our information is just out there right for the picking at this point, and they can harvest it that much easier with artificial intelligence.
Exactly. So once you harvest the information, it's almost like a marketing campaign. So if you're a marketer in a company, you want to find the right buyer, you want to send them the right message at the right time. Scammers are running the same operation. They want to find the right persona. They want to send the right message. They want to communicate via multiple channels. So sometimes you're going to receive a message on LinkedIn, and then you're going to receive a text message, or you receive an email, and then you're going to receive a phone call. That's their way to target people. And we shouldn't assume that it's one person sitting in a dark room, mining all of the information. Those are coordinated attacks. People and organizations have dozens and sometimes hundreds of people working together in order to scam people. So when we're talking about scams, each one of those scams might not be a lot of money. They're not scamming people for, they can scam people for thousands of dollars, but
Yes.
typically on average it's 50, 60, 70 bucks. And those are the type of amounts they scam people for. And people who were scammed for 70 bucks will not even bother to report it or deal with it because they just know that it doesn't worth the time. Most likely they're not going to receive their money back. And that's why we have underreporting of scams.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, you said 60, 70 bucks. Sometimes these toll violations are, maybe even only a couple bucks. And you think, well, what is the motivation there? That doesn't seem to make sense.
Yeah. So the motivation is if you do it to enough people,
it adds up.
It adds up. It adds up to a lot of money. And they rely on the fact that because it's a small amount, most people would not report it, would not do anything about it. If you just lost $2,000, you can be sure that people will do whatever they can to get the money back.
Yeah.
If you just lost $5, you're just going to say, okay, it's not going to worth my time. I'm just going to move on.
And that allows them to kind of just keep flying under the radar, so to speak.
Exactly.
Even though it's so hard to even track them down anyways. But I would also imagine too that, when you're dealing with these smaller amounts, it might actually even make it a little bit more believable.
Yeah.
Because you're not going to believe a $2,000 toll violation, but I might believe a $50.
Exactly. And that's where AI comes to play. Because before that, in order to justify charging someone, scamming someone for $5, $6, you basically had to calculate your own time value. So if you want to make, as a scammer, $100 an hour, you had to take that into account. Now that you have an AI agent doing it for you, you can charge people, scam people for 60 cents, 70 cents. You don't mind because you're not spending the time. You're spending the tokens, but the tokens are much cheaper than your time.
So they've streamlined, they've maximized their efficiency.
Exactly.
For maximum profit.
Exactly. The same as operations or marketing teams do. It's a full operation of how to scam people.
Jeez. Okay, so like man versus machine now, how the heck are we supposed to combat this?
with machines. So it's machines against machines.
So we're going to fight fire with fire.
Once they use AI and sophisticated machine learning in order to scam you, you're going to need, most people will need some way to protect themselves. So some ways to understand if the person that they're talking with is using voice changer or is using voice clone. Some ways to understand if the number that they initiated the call from is spoofed or not. Those are things that most people would not be able to understand by themselves. That's why we need to rely on tools, and that's why we expect mobile carriers, internet service providers, security companies to provide those tools. We cannot just assume that we just going to do it ourselves. We need tools in order to address those situations.
I mean, what does that look like, though, practically speaking?
Yeah, practically speaking, if you're, use most of the mobile carriers in the US, when someone is calling you and it's a spammer, and you're going to see spam. The issue with that is that they're using static databases. So basically, they have a list of all of the known spammers and all of the known scammers. And if someone is initiating a call from one of those numbers, you're going to see spam or scam on your phone. With the new AI tools, you can set up a new number, call 2 or 3 people. Once you're exposed, close the number, start a new number, and you don't even have to work in it.
It's like whack-a-mole.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the new way to do that would not be to create a static list of all of the known spammer and scammers. That's not going to work. The way to do that is to analyze the intent of the caller, the content of the conversations, and behavioral signs in order to understand if it's a scammer.
So you're saying mobile carriers could be deploying some kind of AI learning software to do that?
Exactly. And because most people are focused on their privacy, for good reasons, most of them would not want the mobile carrier to run it on their system.
Right.
So those mobile carriers will have to provide an app or something that sits on your device, whether it's your phone, your computer, that analyzes the communication on your device and decides, basically let you know if that's a scam. The same as you have, most computers out there have antivirus or firewall. We're going to have anti-scam protection running locally on your device without exposing private information, without exposing your private conversation. All of the analysis will be done on the device in order to protect you from scammers, because otherwise it will be practically impossible to detect those scams.
I was going to say, I could see a lot of people, maybe myself included, thinking, well, I don't want some AI listening and monitoring and that being, controlled by the company or whatever. But so you're saying it could be done even locally. I mean, although who's to say? I'm always a little pessimistic that they could probably still get that data. But it could. I liked how you akin it to like an antivirus software, same kind of concept.
And some of the signs that you need are not even the full analysis of the conversation. So, for example, if you're talking with someone and he's claiming to be your daughter or son, but the type of grammar that they use, the type of words that they use, the type of slang that they use are used by someone who's 40, that's not your son or daughter. So just by analyzing the content and a few words that Gen Alpha, Gen Z would not say, you can understand that the person who's talking with you is someone who's Gen X or Gen Y. And those are some of the ways. So you don't have to listen to the entire conversation. You can just listen. The AI can just analyze samples of the conversations to understand if it's a scammer or not a scammer, or if the person claiming to be the person you're talking with is actually the person you're talking with.
What if you're not dealing with a call or like a voice? You're just dealing with like the annoying text messages that we all get.
So that's going to be embedded into your phone, AI that analyzes all incoming messages in order to prevent those texts from reaching to you.
Like a filter,
like a filter, but while the spam filters are just basically filtering based on one message, the new sophisticated scam filters will have to rely on history and context. So, for example, pig butchering. Those are romance scams. People are talking with you and basically starting a romantic relationship, but then after 3 or 4 months, they ask you to send money.
Right.
If you have the regular spam detection, based on one message, it will not detect that we're talking about a scam. So those filters will have to have more context and more understanding of where you're coming from and what are you doing in order to understand that those specific messages are initiating the pig butchering scams.
I was going to say, could it identify a pattern as the messages go on? That
Exactly.
This is what.
Trust building, for example, is one of the first signs of pig butchering. And if that can address that and identify someone who's trying to build trust with you, there are various techniques like sharing personal information about themselves, of course,
Yeah.
fake identities and so on and so on. If we can identify those things in advance, then we can prevent those pig butchering scams.
Which I hate the term pig butchering, but I know they use it because it's like you fatten up your victim and then you go in for the slaughter and the money. But I just every time I hear the term, I'm like, oh, it's an awful term. So okay, realistically then, how far off are we from these kinds of things becoming a reality that are on our devices?
No, not very far. And the technology is there. Actually, we're one of the providers that provide that technology. Other companies do it as well. Now it's only the game of adoption. So we need mobile carriers, we need internet service providers, we need security companies to adapt the technology and include it in their packages. People don't want to download the package for protecting them from scams and download the package for protecting them from viruses. They want a one-type solution that protects them on the device. So that's why we need to have a solution that includes everything. And that's our strategy. We work with mobile carriers, we work with internet service providers to include our technology in the apps that people already have on their device. So you don't need to download a new app, don't need to install a new technology. People are getting tired of like having.
We've got enough apps, Ron.
Exactly. So including it into your bank app, including into your mobile carrier app, including it into your internet provider's app.
Seamless integration.
Exactly. You don't need to think about it. It just does things in the background for you on your device to make sure that you're not being scammed.
In the meantime, though, until that happens, is there anything that I can do as a consumer?
So first of all, you need to make sure that you're noticing the signs. So based on the type of events in the year, you need to make sure that you're not falling for the relevant scams. So for example, tax season. We just finished tax season a while ago. Based on tax season, you're going to start receiving tax refunds and SMSs about those things. Once you notice that based on the events of the year, you start receiving scams, you're less likely to fall for those scams. And it's relevant not just for tax season. It's relevant for Christmas, Thanksgiving, 4th of July. Anytime there is an opportunity to promote something, to ask you for something, those are the times that you're most vulnerable for those things.
So even now that we're out of tax season, people will be getting notifications maybe about, oh, there's an issue with your refund or something like that. That's what you're talking about in that. They use, again, like it's just enough truth to be dangerous.
Exactly. There was a problem with your extension. You just extended your, your tax submission. Just enter here and confirm it using, uploading your social security card, and that's it. Those are the type of scams that people are most worried about because they want it to go away. I just extended. I didn't want to submit my tax now. Why are you contacting me a week after that?
Right. Yeah. Or like during the holidays, if it's like a delivery issue or something like that, same kind of idea.
Exactly. I just sent my family something for Christmas. You're telling me that there is an issue with the delivery. Yes, I'll pay the $18. I want the delivery to get there by Christmas. Like, why are you contacting me?
In other words, continue to expect that these text messages are going to come through.
That's for sure.
We're going to continue to get these text messages, but, we're not totally powerless.
Yeah, that's for sure. Technology is here to help us. There is a lot of AI doomerism about, the risks of AI.
What did you say? What did you call it?
Doomerism?
I would argue that that's probably accurate.
Yeah.
I feel like the AI could either help us or totally annihilate us. I haven't decided yet.
Yeah, I think most people think that AI is bad in the US, according to recent surveys. And I think it's less popular than basically any institution in the US.
Which is saying a whole lot right now when you think about public sentiment.
Exactly. So I want people to understand that AI can be used in order to protect us from those type of scams. It's not all bad.
Okay, but like this idea of AI is going to combat AI at a time when most of us are thinking, I'm so done with AI. Like, are we really going down this path right now? Really? That's the solution? More AI?
So I think that in terms of AI, we all know, I think most of us know that that's the future. We're going to use it. We're going to be more productive, and we're going to be able to do more with less, or maybe more with more, depending on how you look at it. But because we're able to do more, scammers are also able to do more. So what used to take them an hour now takes them 1 minute, 2 minutes, and that's why we have to protect ourselves. The same as you didn't when you were riding horses, you didn't need a seatbelt, but when you were driving fast cars, you need a seatbelt. So as technology advances, you need to advance accordingly.
That's a good point. Ron Kerbs, CEO of Philadelphia-based cybersecurity firm Kidas. Thanks so much for coming in and breaking this down for us. We've all been impacted by it at some point or another, it feels like.
Thanks for having me, Josh, and stay safe out there. If you're listening.
Thank you for sharing your insight. We appreciate it.